Let's bring in Mike Florio from Pro Football Talk on NBCSN. Mike, good morning. How are you?
How are you, buddy?
Well, just trying to sort out this Josh Allen situation. Should he have gone through and done interviews today?
Well, I don't know that there's an easy way for him to dig out of this hole. And look, he's a young kid still, and he was even younger and stupider when he did the tweets 6-7 years ago. I don't know at this point what you do to undo the damage. And the problem is, I think somebody must have timed this to cause maximum mayhem,
absolutely.
right? Whether it's a rival agent, could be somebody from a team that loves him and wants to get him. And you know what? Let's drop this stuff out there so he slides down and we can grab him. I mean, there's all sorts of dirty things that happen around the draft, millions of dollars riding on it, futures of franchises. And look, I don't want to defend the content. It is what it is. But for it all to come up now, it puts him in the worst possible spot to try to sift through it. So you got to ask yourself, am I going to make it better, or is there a chance I'm going to make it worse? And if there's any chance I'm going to make it worse, it's better to say nothing.
How do you think teams are going to react to this tonight?
Well, I think it just depends upon what each individual team thinks, how they assess it, what their owner thinks, what the coach thinks, what the GM thinks. And, at a minimum, if there's a team that calls Josh Allen's agent and says, we want to get him on the phone today, he better get on the phone with them. And if they have questions, he'd better answer them, or they're just going to say, forget it, we don't want this guy. So even if he doesn't say anything publicly, he better be ready to talk privately to any team that wants to talk to him about this and figure out what happened. Of course, the broader issue is, and the lesson to be learned, apart from not saying stupid things ever, especially on social media, but when you know you're going to be occupying a huge platform, you got to go back and clean that stuff up. And you'd think that the agent would tell the players, and if they haven't now, they need to tell them going forward. You got to go back and clean those things up.
What should the Browns do tonight? What will the Browns do tonight?
Well, I don't know what they're going to do. Isn't that fun? I think teams have embraced the reality show component of this. There was a time, Dan, when they would not only tell us who they were going to take, they'd sign them to a contract before the draft. Mm-hmm. What fun is that when the draft begins? I think the Browns, who have been unable to fascinate us with their performance on the field, have decided, hey, if we can fascinate people with not telling them who the number one pick in the draft is, we'll do that instead. And there's like a twinkle in John Dorsey's eye, I've noticed, when I talk to him about it. They don't want to tell anybody because they like the fact that everyone wants to know something about the Browns. And this Baker Mayfield thing, and there's just something about this kid. And, when you think of the intangibles, what do the Browns need? And if all things are relatively equal, and it really is a crapshoot, we know it's a crapshoot. John Schneider, the Seahawks GM, had some great comments earlier this week about the Aaron Rodgers experience when he was in Green Bay in 2005. As Rodgers is falling, the Packers don't know what to do. They haven't done the work on the guy. They're scrambling. Why is he falling? Do we take him? Do we not take him? And they take him, and he ends up being one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. So if all things are relatively equal, there's just something about Baker Mayfield that fits with what the Browns need. They need a full reset on that franchise. They need a guy who's going to come in there with attitude and swagger. And I feel like, for me and many others, it changes instantly the perception of that franchise if they take Baker Mayfield. And who knows? But if they do, I think it's going to be one heck of a story.
Quarterback you don't like?
Well, yeah. And I have Chris Sims every day telling me the virtues and the benefits and the upside of Josh Allen. And I understand that if you play for a bad team, the product is going to be bad. But look at his games last year. He had like 4 games with under 100 passing yards. How does that happen if you're a great quarterback? I mean, I guess if they just have you hand the ball off all the time, it happens. But if you're a truly great quarterback who's going to be a great NFL player, I feel like we're going to see more of that through the college experience, no matter how good or bad the team is that you play on. And that's one of the rules of thumb I've heard over the years. You got to be dominant at the college level to have any chance of being dominant at the NFL level. And these issues with his footwork, I know he says he's fixed them, but he's got accuracy issues, footwork problems. And I feel like while there's a chance he could be truly, truly great, there's a greater chance that it's just going to be another one of these guys that a few years from now we're talking about him like we talk about Blaine Gabbert, Jake Locker, Christian Ponder, and all the other guys that came in with a lot of hype and promise and washed out without doing much of anything.
What should the Giants do at 2?
I'd take Saquon Barkley. I really would.
Yeah.
I would not take a quarterback, and I think when Eli Manning comes out and says 37 isn't old, that's his code for don't take a quarterback. I intend to be here, right? So, and Tony Dungy made a great point a few weeks ago. He said that when he was with the Steelers in the early 80s, they really liked Dan Marino, but they didn't want to have an awkward transfer from Marino to Bradshaw, or Bradshaw to Marino, so they didn't do it. So it comes down to what do the Giants think of these guys. And I don't think there's a guy that they feel strongly enough about that they'd be willing to deal with the back page of the tabloids and the constant questions of when does Eli Manning give way to the guy that they took at number 2. Instead, you get Barkley. He makes your offense better. He makes Eli better. Barkley, Odell Beckham Jr., are you kidding me? You don't need an offensive line at all if you got those two guys. And I think that Barkley makes the most sense for the Giants at 2.
Do you make anything of Shad Khan, Jacksonville's owner, buying Wembley Stadium as to having a great home field for an NFL team, relocating there?
Well, the knee-jerk reaction is going to be that, yeah, hey, the Jaguars are going to move to London, and they're going to say all the right things, that they're not going to leave Jacksonville. But play this out. At some point, that stadium in Jacksonville needs to be replaced. And when Shad Khan and the Jaguars start asking for taxpayer money to build a new stadium, what are the politicians going to say? They're going to say, you bought a stadium in London. Why didn't you just buy a stadium here? Right? So you quickly reach impasse over the amount of taxpayer money that you want, and they can't get a deal done, so you move the team to London. And sorry, it's not my fault. The people in Jacksonville didn't want to provide the money to build the stadium to keep the Jaguars here. And it won't surprise me if that's the way it goes. And if I'm an owner of another team that's hoping to get taxpayer money, every time an owner buys his own stadium, I cringe because I know I'm going to have to deal with that now when I try to shake free money out of the trees, because you've got Stan Kroenke building that $5 billion complex and paying for it himself in L.A., and you've got the Patriots that own their stadium, and now you've got a guy who owns a stadium in another country. It just makes it harder and harder to get taxpayer money. And I'm not saying it's right to get it. I'm just saying from a business standpoint, these owners like to be able to get it if they can. This is going to make it even harder.
Thank you, Mike. Have fun tonight. We appreciate your time.
All right, Dan, take care, pal.
Mike Florio, ProFootballTalk.com, Pro Football Talk on NBCSN.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV or download the Dan Patrick Show app.